Hey nerd, welcome to another installment of Little Lore from Where the Streetlights End, a show where I tell you a little bit about whatever weird and spooky thing I think is cool this week. Usually trying to utilize my master's degree in history to shed some interesting cultural or historical light on the spooky thing and let you know why horror is so important to us as individual people and the stories that we tell. The subject can be either from folklore, from history, from film, or really anything else that tickles my fancy. Today, I've got a monster for you that is widely known in modern times and which instills a fear in people so unshakable that it lasts a lifetime in their victims. But before I get into it, I'd like to ask that you subscribe to the channel if you like what I do here. It would mean the world to me. Click the like button if you would like to let me know that these videos aren't total garbage, and comment down below and let me know if you've ever seen anything weird in your bedroom or in the woods at night that has scared the living shiz out of you. I've also got a Patreon that you can join to get personal updates, engage in some conversation, and support me through this wretched life. Let's get it. In 2003, many individuals from the northeastern region of the United States began posting on message boards and social media platforms regarding their encounters with something deeply disturbing. Most of the first-hand accounts came from rural New York and the surrounding areas, but there were reported sightings in other places across the continent, even as far away as Idaho. People were coming forward to share their frightening stories, and they were finding that they were not alone. Countless individuals had been finding something out in the dark woods, or meeting something in their dark bedrooms, which had left them trembling in fear and even traumatized for years to follow. And all across the internet, these stories were the same. They had seen the very same thing. This creature is known as the Rake. The most frequently cited experiences with this horrible creature take place in people's bedrooms. Individuals will be resting peacefully in their beds when something stirs them from their slumber. They awaken to see a wretched humanoid figure hunched near the foot of their bed, its pale, taut skin glowing in the darkness, its eyes like hollow caves in its bald face, sometimes with shimmering light reflected, like coins deep in those holes. It will reach and caress them with its cold, wet hands. Many believe that this monster creeps into people's bedrooms at night, puts nightmares into their heads, a la Freddy Krueger, I suppose, and watches them suffer in fear before killing them in the night. Less often, this creature is one who lurks outside. Sometimes, and these are the more common stories that I've seen lately, more recently, an encounter with the Rake starts off with someone or a small group of people being outside at night. I know, rookie mistake. While going about their business, whether it be walking home from an event, just getting some fresh air, or even just taking out the trash while daring to live in a more rural area, the hair raises up on the back of their neck. That spine-tingling sensation that you get when you're being watched by a predator rises up inside of them. Some have reported an unnatural sound, like a clicking or a scraping or a gnashing noise coming from the darkness. In this moment, they turn to see what could possibly be having this effect on them, like what is going on. And then their eyes catch a glimpse of something totally horrifying, something unreal reflecting the moonlight back at them. They will see what looks like a tall, pale-skinned man. Sometimes it would be standing up against a tree, or perhaps the wall of a garage or other tall structure, and this view would emphasize the unholy height of the entity, appearing to be taller than any living man has the right to be. Other times, however, it would be sprawled across the ground, hands and feet planted in the dirt, holding itself up like a spider, right, as it peered out from the bushes or from under the ground cover. This position emphasizing the irregular length of its limbs and the unnatural way that its joints would bend and jut outward. Its face was pale with little definition, features minimal and smooth other than the deep black pits that served as its eyes. Sometimes a crooked, inhuman mouth would smile or drop open to let out a scream. Ugh. In 2006, someone worked to compile every known document or file which detailed these encounters, and to my knowledge, No existing records claim that the rake has intentionally harmed the person who came across it, like physically, and in that moment. Perhaps those who have lived to tell the tale were simply lucky, however. Like I said earlier, it tries to kill people while they're sleeping, so perhaps those who have discussed their encounters, it missed their chance, right? Everyone who has met this entity in person has been left with a lingering dread and fear that has lasted the rest of their lives. Many have been too traumatized to be found outdoors after dark. Some don't sleep with the lights off anymore. I've seen claims across the internet that the lasting terror that the rake leaves within its victims has led people to take their own lives. Is it possible that the rake feeds on fear, or perhaps on the life force taken from those who give up existing rather than live through the trauma it inflicts? I shall now read to you a few of the accounts that I've come across, which seem to detail encounters with the rake. If these accounts are to be believed, and are to be agreed upon as referring to the same entity, then the rake's reign of terror dates back hundreds of years. A mariner's log from 1691. It states, "He came to me in my sleep. From the foot of my bed, I felt a sensation. He took everything. We must return to England. We shall not come here again at the request of the rake." And see, in that one, it calls it the rake, with a capital R. So it has a name there. Then a journal entry, supposedly translated from Spanish from 1880. It states, "I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I see his eyes when I close mine. They are hollow, black. They saw me and pierced me. His wet hand, I will not sleep. His voice, unintelligible text." This one comes from 1964 and was allegedly a suicide note left behind, which says, "As I prepare to take my life, I feel it necessary to assuage." I read that word all the time. I've never had to say it out loud. Assuage. Assuage. Tell me how to pronounce that down in the comments. "Any guilt or pain I have introduced through this act. It is not the fault of anyone other than him. For once I awoke and felt his presence, and once I awoke and saw his form. Once again I awoke and heard his voice and looked into his eyes. I cannot sleep without fear of what I might next awake to experience. I cannot ever wake. Goodbye." Found in the same wooden box were 2 empty envelopes addressed to William and Rose, and 1 loose personal letter with no envelope, which read, "Dearest Linny, I have prayed for you. He spoke your name." But what is the rake? Indigenous peoples across the U.S., particularly those found in the northern stretches of Appalachia, have spoken of a frightening humanoid that lurks in the darkness of the forests. Descriptions of these creatures vary, and names for it vary, depending on which indigenous group you speak to. But belief in something weird, almost human, and extremely not quite right are almost universal among indigenous cultures in North America. The typical advice you'll find on how to deal with these beings is to simply ignore them. Avoid them at all costs, and if you cannot avoid them, you ignore them and hope that you're not holding in a shit at that moment. Indigenous legends regarding frightening humanoid entities in the darkness are some of my favorites to analyze. Most folkloric creatures serve a pretty clear purpose within a society, and that purpose is evident in their physical characteristics or in the behavior of the monster. These ones, however, despite being generally universal, are hard to really nail down in that regard, especially among cultures who already have a more popular sort of bogeyman figure, which exists to scare people away from the dark woods, or teach people not to talk to strangers, or to remember to lock their doors at night, right? Which purpose do we think these freaky, pale, not quite human entities serve, like the rake? Especially these ones who seem to scare people nearly to death but aren't known to actually kill. Working to decipher exactly what type of monster the rake is becomes difficult because of the different settings people seem to find it in. If it were specifically found in bedrooms at night, it would fall into the same category as perhaps the Hat Man, or Pisadera the Night Hag, or even Al-Karisi, who I've talked about before. those demonic forces which come in the night and prey upon victims while they're defenseless in their sleep. The stories about finding the rake in the wild at night, as well, suggest that it could be something from the forest, like those indigenous creatures I mentioned earlier. But maybe those who meet the rake in their beds were first clocked by it while they were outdoors before returning to their homes. Maybe you see it outside or it sees you outside and it follows you back to your place and it gets you in the night, right? So I would then venture to wonder, what about those individuals who saw it in the woods but survived the night and it didn't come into their bedroom? Did they do something different from other people? Are their houses warded? Do they have friggin' catnip or salt or something around their doorway that prevented it from getting in? Or does it simply exist to scare people, and sometimes it's in the woods to do that, and sometimes it's in your bedroom to do that? Which is it? Tell me more. Do we think that the rake is one of those folkloric monsters from Indigenous tales that I'd mentioned earlier? Are there different people around the country perhaps seeing different old school entities that have been around since long before colonization? Are they even different species or different types of being that people are seeing, but then they have the same sort of appearance and behavior? Like, is it something different that people are seeing in the woods versus what they're seeing in their bedrooms? But we're calling it the same thing because it looks the same. Perhaps it's possible that they are totally different and they're being described the same way by modern people who encounter them. I may, unfortunately, have to burst a few bubbles here, which honestly, I love doing that. While the rake may very well be a real phenomenon, and people may indeed be seeing something by this description, the rake itself is honestly nothing more than a creepypasta. So creepypastas, if you don't know, are scary fiction stories that people write and post on message boards, essentially. It's a fun game for internet nerds to post their scary stories, and other internet nerds add on to them and spread them around the rest of the internet to get people riled up. I personally love creepypastas, and they're a perfect combination of my interests, with the storytelling, the evolution of stories across culture and time, horror, and people being weird on the internet. I love all those things. This particular monster was born of a collaborative effort over on 4chan on the random board B. I used to hang out there. That truly was a nightmare. There are monsters there. I am traumatized. Okay, someone posted on B asking for others to contribute characteristics and details for them to combine together in order to create the most frightening creature possible. This is why those earlier stories that I told you, like the Mariner's Log and the Suicide Note, probably aren't real. It's quite likely that the individuals involved in creating this monster fabricated those stories to add more credibility to their spooky little prank. But hey, while creepypastas start out as pure fiction and are initially shared because people think that fooling other people is funny, the good ones do turn into urban legends and leave an important mark on our culture. That's what happened with the Rake. It was just a goofy story and a little pranky prank, but everyone knows the Rake now, and people believe that they see the Rake pretty often now, despite it being technically made up. And you know about Slender Man, right? Shit, I should cover Slender Man. The Rake is actually pretty horrifying, though, based on what my brain creates and draws up in itself while reading the description. I am unsettled just by what my own imagination creates based on those words, right? And I think that's part of why it stuck around. One thing worthy of note is that belief sometimes makes things happen. People believe that things can come into being simply by people believing in them, right? Tulpas are not that. Tulpas are from Buddhism, and it has to do with meditation. But there is a modern misunderstanding of tulpas that has twisted it to mean some being that exists because it was believed in hard enough. And so, like, the modern interpretation of a tulpa It needs a new word because I feel like that's super rude to the actual belief system that real tulpas are from, but whatever. There is a belief that if you believe in something hard enough, it will come into being. Manifestation, right? And it's possible that if enough people believe in the rake, it could become real. Or perhaps it's just real enough in the minds of those who believe in it for it to matter, right? Because just because someone believes in something that isn't real doesn't mean it's not real to them and it doesn't have a real impact on them. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit. I like talking about this stuff though. And it is interesting to consider that the rake, perhaps, resembles other folkloric entities from around the world in either appearance, behavior, or purpose. Myths and folkloric entities tend to fulfill a specific purpose for the culture that recognizes them and shares their stories. In the case of the rake, it could be one of a million different creatures that fits into our modern and ancient, but particularly the modern version of humanity's discomfort with things that look human but are not. The old, not quite right feeling you get when looking at, say, a man shaped shadow or even an AI generated person on video. Uncanny valley type of stuff, right? But in the case of the rake, this is a lot more unsettling than something that is just a little bit off. The rake is like the imagination's depiction of all things scary, presented as something not too different from ourselves. Anyway, what do you think? Do you think that there is something more to the rake? Do you think that maybe there isn't, and the rake is just a scary story written by some nerd? But there is something else out there that we would describe the same way? Have you ever seen anything like this? I have seen a lot of spooky shit around me at night, but that's probably because I get sleep paralysis all the time and I have ADHD. And that ADHD has gone untreated my entire life and has therefore kept me largely sleep deprived throughout all my years. And that can lead to your mind playing tricks on you pretty often, especially if you don't know that you have ADHD and don't realize that you're sleep deprived, right? Story of my life. Anyway, that's my episode about the rake. I actually didn't know a whole lot about it before making the video. I knew it was a creepypasta and I knew generally what it looked like, so this was kind of fun for me. Let me know what you think. I asked a lot of questions in there. If you remember any of them, comment down below. Or go to my Patreon and tell me there. I'll post this video there. And when I post my videos on Patreon, like from here, that is an open invitation for anyone in my patronage to comment on the Patreon page instead of on here if you want to keep what you say a little bit more, private, right? You don't want all of YouTube to see what you have to say. You can post it there on the Patreon and I'll see it and the other nerds over there will see it. And we can talk. Come at me. If you join the Patreon, there are free tiers where you can communicate and everything like that. But if you want to support me, I would love that too. Give a little extra oomph behind what I do here. Help me pay for my dog's medication. Stuff like that. Anyway, you don't have to, obviously, but subscribe if you like what I do. I strongly encourage that if you have enjoyed more than maybe 2 or 3 of my videos, you should subscribe. Because even if I don't do that same type of video very often, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna do it again. And you'll want to see it probably. Like it if you like it. Comment down below to tell me you hate my stupid face. I love you.